The very first time I spoke here wasn't really here. It was actually from my office when we were still doing virtual. And I talked about my process, which is the conscious creation process. So today we're going to be talking about one particular step in the process, but I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what the conscious creation process is. Those of us who have been in New Thought, ancient wisdom teachings for any amount of time have absolutely heard the phrase, thoughts create a reality.
Oh, yeah.
And when I walked into my very first New Thought Center in 1988, can you believe it? I swear I was in diapers still. I probably shouldn't say that. I was 4 years old. You know, I was young. Yeah, I was in my early 20s, if I'm doing math correctly. And this idea that thoughts could create reality was absolutely mind-blowing for me. Because I was completely unaware of the narrative. I was completely unaware of what I had absorbed from my environment. And so I didn't even realize yet that there was a narrative, much less that it was creating reality. And then after a period of time, through believing that spiritual awakening was a process, I went to the workshops, I learned how to use affirmations, I read the books, I went to the retreats, and I thought, I'm going to get there one day. There's going to be this amazing finish line. And I'm sure whoever's standing up there speaking has definitely reached the finish line, right? I had them on this pedestal, literally, and no, right? Because they were ascended masters. And they would say things like, well, yeah, it's only right now. But my mind couldn't yet conceive of that. So I still believed it was a process. So I did all of that. And then something really beautiful happened. I realized the greatest paradox of life. It is a process and it's an event. And that yes, on one level of conscious awareness, our thoughts create a reality. Then there's this other level of awareness that we could call phase 2 living, we could call the mystical experience, we could call it reconnecting with our true essence, our Buddha nature, our God self, that we realize that it's only right now. And that the primary illusion of the mind is believing that there's some place to go other than here. During the meditation, I was really aware of what it must have felt like to be in the womb for 9 months or so. I was really aware of the safety. Right? We're literally floating in this wonderful, perfectly temperatured fluid. And then in an instant, we're thrust into the world. Now, I know we're evolving a lot in the way we work with birth, but in my day, this is how it looked. I was pulled out with forceps, and I was put into an incubator. And even though I don't have a conscious memory of that, I have a visceral memory of that. I do remember the sense of shock. But what I was aware of during the meditation is that in an instant, we become reliant on the world. Because we come into the world, in some ways it's helpless, and in another way it's spiritually whole. And we rely on the doctor, the nurse, the mother, the father, the parents to care for us, or we literally die. And why is this important in this conversation about living from inner vision? Instantly, the moment of birth, we become reliant on the world. And so it's automatically outer focused. Please help me, please feed me, please love me. And, we get that, or we don't, or we get that sometimes and not others. And we develop our identity based on what happens outside of us. And I'm really aware that in psychology, we know that in the first 5 years, we're pretty much programmed. Now, I want to be clear, we know in New Thought we can change the program. But for the sake of psychology or the way they frame it, by 5 years, you're pretty much programmed and you have essentially your point of view set. And then we go about being in the world, discovering the evidence to support it. Right? And so, core false beliefs about ourselves and the world that become the operating system. And we're still looking to the world. And if you're like me, my 20s, I'm bringing this back to the first time I walked into New Thought, my 20s was an outer search. That outer search was still continuing. And I wanted the world to be a certain way so that I could be okay. And New Thought actually fit really nicely into that. Oh, I can use affirmations outside of myself in some ways. I can use spiritual community outside of myself in some ways. I can find a spiritual teacher outside of myself to help me feel better or to bring peace. And I'm really struck by the reading today when we talked about joy as the outer expression and returning peace. So sometimes a sentence can be so powerful if I'm willing to pause and lean in. So on my path, I didn't discover it here, by the way. I experienced something profoundly different, and I need to change my thinking so I can change my life. And that was life is energy. And that there are levels to our own frequency. Yes, thoughts have a particular frequency. You know, the last 2 years in our world, there have been a lot of thoughts about what was happening. Do I wear a mask? Do I not wear a mask? Do I follow this party? Do I not party this? Should I look at my unconscious biases? All of this is important, and there's a frequency to where we put our focus. Am I going to focus on division or focus on oneness? By the way, neither one of them is inherently right or wrong. It's just asking myself, what do I want to experience in this world? And at some point, what do I want to offer? And that's that reading. I'm going to express joy. It's not about attracting. It's about radiating. And that was a really long intro to say that I wrote my third book, Conscious Creation, about 2 years ago, with a recognition that we really create our life based on frequency, not on thought, or not on thought alone. And many people, like me, definitely through my 20s, and if I'm really honest, probably also my 30s, wanted to manipulate the world to get what I wanted. And New Thought did fit nicely into it. As a matter of fact, I was in a community that actually was teaching that. I don't think I just misheard it. It was a unity, by the way, and it was basically, if you're a really spiritual person, you will be abundant. And what they meant by abundant is you'll have a lot of money. So, and which is great, and trust me, a lot of money is fun. And it's not all there is, right? Because I thought that was going to make me happy. See, one more time, I was going to use affirmation so that I could get my life looking a certain way so that I could be happy, rather than I am whole and complete and literally a particle of source energy. Literally a particle, the Big Bang. Not only am I not separate from source energy, I'm a particle of source energy, as all of us are. That understanding changes everything. And so I created this 5-step process, and I promised myself, I literally said, I'll never be the person that does the 3 steps to personal freedom or the 7 steps to your best life. And then it came to me in meditation. People kind of like steps. Right, that's the mind. The mind is like check, 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 check. Oh, I'm happy. Oh, I'm free. Right? And so after it's true, right? And so if I can have the steps, then my mind can understand what this process is. And the greatest mystery of all is the spiritual journey. That's why Native Americans, you often hear Native Americans calling God the great mystery. Or in the Tao, it is said, once you name the Tao, it's no longer the Tao. Right? And that's why the Buddhists talk about the middle way. It's not to be understood in the mind. And so here are the 5 steps. It's based on a very, very simple premise, which we talked about a lot last Sunday. The world isn't happening. I'm holding a projector, and I'm projecting onto a blank screen. Now, when I say the world isn't happening, I don't mean things aren't happening, but each of us is having a different experience of this moment, and they're all 100% correct. No one is wrong, and no one is right. We're all experiencing, on some level, what we expect to experience. So someone would be like, I can't believe you wore that flat jacket. I mean, come on. Or someone else might be like, oh, it's so cool as a minister. The dress is so cool. I mean, you know. And it's inherently meaningless, right? And so I'm gonna lean into something because this could be controversial in our world. I don't think everything happens for a reason. Not in the way we frame it. Right? And I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean by that. When we say everything happens for a reason, we're tending to think that there's some inherent reason outside of us that's giving us some kind of lesson. And if you grew up in a traditional religion, and not all traditional religions, but some of them teach about a punishing God or an external God that either rewards or punishes. Right? And then we come into New Thought, and we change the language, but sometimes keep the concept. The cosmic 2x4. Right? All we're saying is a punishing God, only it's in the form of a 2x4. And so if I say everything happens for a reason, where's the power? In something outside of me. And as we grow in awareness, because that's not wrong, it's that and. We create the meaning of what we experience. Right? So sometimes we will say to someone who gets a diagnosis, well, everything happens for a reason. But we literally, something happens, I attach a meaning to it, and based on the meaning I attach to it, I experience what happened. And this is the point of power to me, because we have the ability to clear the lens of the projector. Clear the lens of the projector. Byron Katie puts it in such a beautiful way. We see, we're holding a projector. This is very much a paraphrase, by the way. She's so wonderful. If we have a piece on the lens of our projector, we will see it everywhere, in every person, in every situation, in every relationship, in every work environment. And we think that the lens is in the experience, but the lens is actually on the projector. Clearing away the projector, we get to see the world in a new and different way. So that brings me to this 5-step process. And I've given it an acronym M.O.V.I.E, because we're holding a projector, we're creating our movie. So M.O.V.I.E. M, making peace with the past. Because I can't create a new movie if I'm carrying around the old movie. And I think maybe last Sunday or the last time I spoke, maybe this is also a little bit controversial perhaps. We can change the past. If it's true that the only past that actually exists is the past in our mind, or the story that we're carrying around, we can actually change that story. Remember, something happens, I attach a meaning to it, and I experience what I call reality based on not the event but the meaning. This is not meant to disempower. This is meant to empower us. Because someone approached me after saying this once and said, "You're victim blaming." So what I'm not saying is it didn't happen. They call it gaslighting now, right? We're not gaslighting. We're not saying that didn't happen. But what I discovered in a powerful moment of awareness, which then took me 20 years to actually start applying, but that's okay. When I was new in my spiritual journey, and for me in my recovery, I was working on addressing my past. And I was writing out the events of my life. And I thought it would be really great to call my sisters, back when phones had wires, and so, dial it. And it wasn't rotary still, although we had one of those when I was a kid. Hello, sisters. And I wanted to hear their version of events. And I was pretty darn sure that they were going to have different versions of the event. But I discovered something miraculous. Different events. I had a story that my dad was never home. Therefore, I decided at a very early age that I was not lovable. My sister, to this day, will say, we had the most open, present, loving father. He was at dinner every night. What? He was at dinner every night. In my memory, he literally was not there for dinner a lot of nights. And she says, of course he was there for dinner every night. he's a school teacher, so he took these vacations every year for 3 months. Oh, yeah, I guess that is true. So it wasn't what happened, because no one knows exactly what happened. The only thing that's alive is our stories of the events, and in this case, totally different events. A dramatically different conclusion. And so because she has a different interpretation of what happened, she has a different idea about herself and the world. Neither one of them is wrong. It's not me saying, you're wrong, he wasn't home for dinner. I don't know if he was home for dinner, but I know what I remember. He wasn't home a lot, right? And so we often hear that forgiveness is the first step to liberation. And for me, I want to modify the word forgiveness. First of all, if the 5 steps was forgiveness, it would be called FUBI, and FUBI is not a great acronym, right? So create a new FUBI for your life. So first step is not forgiveness, it's making peace with the past. So forgiveness, as we understand it, is deeply entrenched in the consciousness of good and bad and right and wrong. You wronged me, but I'm going to be a better person and forgive you. Or I have done something so horrifically bad, and I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. And so making peace with the past is very different for me than forgiveness. Can I make peace regardless of what I've done or what has happened? Because one thing that I can say, one thing I know to be true is when I have caused harm in the world, because I have, 100% of the time, it's because I forgot who and what I am or was. I believed I was broken or damaged, not that I was an infinite being. And because I believed I was broken and damaged, I acted that way in the world, and then I created evidence to support that conclusion. See, I am bad. I am broken. I stole from you. I hurt you. I abandoned you. I betrayed you. And when I can discover that for myself, even in the most extreme circumstances, I can say that person did that as well. Not bypassing the feelings. I want to be clear. I'm not saying, well, the person who sexually abused me did the best he could, so I forgive him. What I am saying is, the healing for me is through feeling the pain and then coming to a place of recognizing that I can't change what happened in my mind. I can't change what happened, which we know isn't really true. But I can't change my conclusion about myself. Right? I can change my conclusion about men. I can change my conclusion about what love is. And then everything starts to shift. So if I am wanting to create, I'll use a metaphor within a metaphor. How's that? If I'm wanting to create a painting, and I have an old painting and just paint over it, the possibility of the old paint seeping through is there. A blank canvas is the way to consciously create the life of our dreams. And nothing needs to change except for every thought I've ever had about myself and the world. Right? Every thought. And then M.O.V.I.E, overcoming core false beliefs. What are those core false beliefs I've been carrying around about myself and the world? And more importantly, what's the frequency attached to them? I am damaged, I am broken. Right? And then I'm radiating that into the world, and guess what? I'm not attracting things to match that vibration. Yes, I am. But I'm also attracted to that vibration. Right? So when I believed I was unlovable, I could come into this room. I'm not going to point at you. I'll choose a fake person here. Oh, you're the person that's going to unconsciously confirm that I'm unlovable. Right? I had a series of relationships with very, very wonderful men that could not possibly be available for me, and then I blamed them. Whew. Right? How dare you not love me? But I chose them. And that's not the bad news, that's the wonderful news. If I chose them for a reason. I chose them because there's a congruent vibration with the core false belief. And if that's true, if I start to question the core false belief and change the frequency, I start to choose differently. Once I start to feel more in love with myself, and I don't mean my personality self, although that can be fun, I'm talking about really a deep sense of love. Like, it's almost like that sense of allowing myself to be back in the womb, that protection, but only I can provide it. And as I overcome those core false beliefs, the frequency changes, and suddenly the most loving people are right in front of me, and they were there all along. Wow, I didn't manifest anyone or anything. I just simply tuned in, and there you were. In the quantum field, we know that that's now what science is showing us, what mystics have been saying for thousands of years, that the observer has a profound effect. And I can literally only see what I believe I'm worthy of seeing. Literally. I hope I haven't told this story. I repeat myself a lot. My husband says, honey, whatever you do, don't tell the tiger stories. I do that so someone will say, tell the tiger story, but I'm not going to do it. But the metaphor I use is, imagine that you're new to the law of attraction, and every morning you have a routine. You go to your coffee shop and you have your bagel and your small black coffee every day. That's your routine. You're comfortable with it. You become friends with the owner, and then you start either coming to unity, we could use that, or you start using the law of attraction. I'm going to manifest a croissant. So you start to affirm, I love croissants, buttery and flaky, I'm eating it, it's so delicious. And then you get ready, and you go to your regular spot, and you say, I would like a croissant and a small coffee. And the owner of the cafe hands it to you. Wow, I manifested a croissant, it's so powerful. Croissants have always been there, right below the bagel. It's always been there. So as we overcome the core false beliefs that keep us in our belief that we're stuck, we start to realize that we have a blank canvas. And so then that brings us to visioning. And I'm going to close with this, even though that was actually the topic. Living from inner vision. Once we clear away all that we perceive has prevented us from living the life of our dreams, we recognize that there's a power within us, a blueprint of infinite potentiality, of infinite possibility, a place that's unharmed and unharmable. And we're moving beyond the construct of limitation that the mind creates and into what we could call phase 2 living, which is everything out here is actually an illusion created by the projector. And when I invite myself to listen very carefully to what once was called the still small voice, which is neither still nor small the more we make contact with it, it's always there. I listen intently to that, to the best of my ability, move beyond any ideas of good, bad, right, wrong, or what I think the world should be, or what I think I should be doing, and simply listen. Miraculous things happen. Starting with listening intently and using Michael Beckwith's question, what is the highest possibility for my life? Or you could say, what is the highest possibility for this community? Or what is the highest possibility of our next minister? Right, so we're going to explore that together. We're going to be, to the best of our ability, still enough to listen to inner wisdom, which is a place where we're all one. And ideas come from that place that are so profound and so different than the ideas in the mind. And in an instant, we can tap into that and allow that inner wisdom to guide us. And here's the greatest news of all. Life becomes easy. Life becomes simple. I have everything I need to fulfill that vision. Enough money, enough energy, enough people, enough time. And one might ask, is it possible to live that way at every single moment? And the answer is yes. And sometimes I forget it. Sometimes I forget that it's that simple and I have to return to it. Right? Because if, I'll catch a vision, and it'll be really a beautiful vision, and then within about 15 seconds, my mind is like, oh, I know what that's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like this, and then I start doing the action plan. And then I've forgotten that the vision is so much bigger than my mind. And then, oh gosh, oh yeah, infinite possibilities. Oh, that's who I am. I'm not this. That's something that is used as a servant, but not a master. Sorry to use that language, but I think it's poignant. aware of the weight that language holds, and in this case, it actually is the most descriptive language, because I do feel like a prisoner to my mind when it's in control. So as we tap into inner vision, and dedicate ourselves to living from that and as that, then life becomes a great experiment, and we radiate a greater reality into the world. And then the greatest paradox is the world does seem to reflect that. I start to make different choices. And then there's this spiral upward of infinite possibilities, and we find ourselves surrounded by people like the people in this room that support that. So what is the highest possibility for your life in this moment? What is the life of your dreams? And are you willing to take some dedicated time to asking what peace you need to make with your past? What are some of the core false beliefs you're carrying? Create a space of inner awareness, inner openness, and ask the question, what is the highest possibility for my life today? And then listen and feel what emerges. So with that, I invite you to take a moment, move within.